quiet settles without announcement, without delay. It fits the moment as it is. Movement continues nearby, not highlighted, not reduced, just present in its usual form. The ground stays dependable, each step supported, then released, without commentary. Breathing moves freely, not adjusted, not corrected. In, out, at a workable pace. Silence doesn't replace sound, it coexists with it. The quiet finds its place naturally. Groove pop steady stays, no space filled, no gap sealed. The quiet finds its place naturally, and remains. Time passes without markers, no edges defined, no segments named. Attention widens slightly, then rests again without effort. Thoughts drift at the edge, not entering fully, not asking response. Sound underneath stays modest, bass repeating without statement. Keys touching lightly, leaving room intact. Stability doesn't require stillness, only balance. The quiet stays workable while it holds groove pop calm pace, no pressure applied. The quiet stays workable and continues. Movement slows briefly, then resumes, not because it must, but because it can. The surroundings remain active, traffic softens into texture, voices blur into tone, nothing claims priority. The pace stays usable, because nothing interrupts it. Even spacing, open duration, bass loops gently, keys breathe between tones, drums remain dry and distant. Later exists without preparation, without rehearsal. It doesn't need attention to arrive. The quiet feels dependable now, not fragile, not temporary. It feels like something that can be returned to without adjustment. Some calm isn't personal, it's environmental. You don't create quiet, you allow it to function. When nothing demands reaction, the system remembers how to stay alert without strain. Quiet doesn't stop movement, it refines it. Its place naturally. Groove pop steady stays, no force applied, no space denied. The quiet finds its place naturally and holds. Resumes, sound thins, the quiet remains available in the background. The pace settles without notice, already in place before anything adjusts. It remains. Movement continues at a low level, not emphasized, not reduced, just present. Steps meet the ground, then leave it without response, without delay. Breathing stays even, in, out, in, out, in, out, 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 at a range that holds. Nothing signals a change and nothing needs to. The pace stays as it is, groove pop steady. No lift added, no weight removed. The pace stays as it is for now. Time passes without shape, without section. Attention rests nearby, then drifts slightly, then rests again. Thoughts remain peripheral, close enough but not entering. Sound underneath stays modest, bass repeating quietly. Keys touching lightly, then stepping away. Balance doesn't require effort, it requires space. The pace remains usable while it holds. Groove pop, calm, evenly placed. The pace remains usable and continues. Movement slows briefly, then resumes without decision, without marker. Surroundings stay active, but don't compete. Everything blends into texture. Rather than focus, the motion stays workable because nothing interrupts it. Open spacing, soft duration, bass stays circular. Keys breathe between tones, drums remain low and dry. No build, no release, just time staying open. The groove doesn't lead, it stays alongside. Later exists without preparation, without rehearsal. It will arrive as it is. The pace feels dependable, not fragile, not temporary. It feels like something that stays available without being addressed. And some steadiness isn't created, it's maintained. You don't slow things down, you stop pushing them forward when nothing demands reaction. The system remembers how to continue without strain. Calm doesn't remove motion, it smooths it. The pace stays as it is, groove pop steady. Nothing pushed, nothing pulled. The pace stays as it is and holds. Movement continues, sound thins, the pace remains in the background undisturbed. The quiet settles, almost unnoticed, already there before anything responds. It stays, movement continues nearby, not emphasized, not reduced, simply present in its usual way. The ground supports each step, then lets it go, without feedback, without demand. Breathing moves without intention, in, out, at a level that works. Silence doesn't replace sound, it just exists alongside it. The quiet stays where it is, groove pop steady. Nothing added, nothing removed. The quiet stays where it is for now. without marking itself. No sections form, no edges define. Attention widens slightly, then settles back without effort. Thoughts remain near the edge, present but not entering. Sound underneath remains light, bass repeating softly. Keys touching briefly, then stepping away. Balance doesn't announce itself, it's felt quietly. The quiet remains usable while it holds. Groove pop calm, evenly placed. The quiet remains usable and continues. Oh, movement slows for a moment, then resumes. Without decision, without signal, the surroundings stay active but don't compete. Everything blends into texture rather than focus. The pace remains workable because nothing interrupts it. Held spacing, soft duration. Bass stays circular, keys breathe between tones. Drums remain low and dry. No build, no release, just time staying open. The groove doesn't speak, it stays nearby. Later exists without preparation, without rehearsal. It doesn't require attention. The quiet feels dependable, not fragile, not temporary. It feels like something that remains available without being called. Some calm isn't expressed, it's allowed. You don't lower the volume, you stop raising it when nothing asks for reaction. The system remembers how to stay present without tension. Quiet doesn't stop movement, it softens it. The quiet stays where it is. Groove pop steady, nothing push, nothing pull. The quiet stays where it is and holds. Movement continues, sound thins out. The quiet remains in the background undisturbed. She lets the moment stay unfinished. The moment doesn't close, it pauses without asking if she is ready. She stays with it. She used to resolve things quickly, end the sentence, finish the thought, make the shape complete before moving on. But now the unfinished state feels usable, like a window left open, not for air, just for light. Her posture remains relaxed, no tightening, no preparation, standing as a valid form of action. The dog slows its pace, sniffs the ground, then moves again, not collecting meaning, just information. Not everything incomplete is lacking. She lets the moment stay unfinished. Groove pop steady stays, no edge defined, no silence forced. She lets the moment stay open and keeps walking. Her breathing softens, not deeper, just less guarded. She notices how often she rushed toward endings, believing clarity only lived at the conclusion. Now the middle feels stable, not temporary, not weak, just continuous enough to stand on. The sound underneath stays restrained, bass looping without agenda, keys touching lightly, then withdrawing. Stability doesn't require closure, it requires allowance. She remains with the unfinished moment. Groove pop, calm pace, no answer form, no summary stored. She remains until the moment feels sufficient. The dog pauses again, looks briefly, then sits, not waiting for instruction, just resting in between. She recognizes that pattern not as delay, but as design. Around them motion continues. Footsteps overlap, engines hum, everything blends into tone rather than signal. Held duration, loose frame. Bass repeats in a wide circle, keys breathe between tones, drums stay minimal and dry. No build, no resolve, just sustained presence. The groove doesn't conclude, it holds time. She thinks about later and leaves it unshaped. Later doesn't require rehearsal to exist. The unfinished state feels dependable now, not something that collapses when unattended. It feels like a place she can return to without resetting anything. Some clarity isn't reached, it's rested into. You don't finish calm, you stop pushing it forward. When nothing demands completion, the system remembers how to stay attentive without urgency. Leaving things open doesn't stop progress, it softens it. She lets the moment stay unfinished. Groove pop, steady stays, no form enforced, no pause erased. She lets the moment stay open and walks within it. The edges blur, naturally movement continues. The moment remains with her, incomplete but stable. As she walks without filling the space opens before she responds, before she decides it's already there, and she doesn't close it. There was a habit of filling moments with confirmation, with small checks, with progress made visible. But now the space feels usable, without evidence, without markers, like a table that doesn't need objects to exist. Her hands stay relaxed, nothing tightened, nothing released too soon, just present without assignment. The dog keeps pace, not following, not leading, just moving inside the same frame. Not every gap is a problem, some are conditions. She walks without filling the space, groove popping, steady stays, no signal, silence bend. She walks without closing it off, she lets it hold. Her breathing evens out without instruction, the body adjusting before the mind notices. She remembers how often quiet was treated like delay instead of capacity, waiting to be used. The rhythm underneath stays restrained, bass repeating without insistence, keys touching briefly, then stepping back. Ease doesn't announce itself, it settles. She stays inside the open space, groove pop, calm pace, no phrase to finish, no line to chase. She stays until the space feels ordered. stops briefly, looks around and continues. Not checking permission, just responding to enough. She mirrors that timing, not copying, just sharing it around. The motion continues. Cars pass, voices overlap, everything becomes texture instead of demand. Open interval, gentle loop. Bass stays round and contained. Keys breathe between chords, drums and void edges. No emphasis, no arrival, only duration. The groove doesn't explain its support. She thinks of later and lets it remain distant. Later doesn't need planning to arrive intact. The space feels reliable now, not something that collapses when unattended. It feels like something she can step into again without preparation. Some calm isn't produced, it's protected. You don't create space, you stop occupying it. When nothing calls for reaction, the system relearns how to stay alert without tension. Quiet doesn't remove direction, it removes noise. She walks without filling the space. Groove pop, steady stays, no weight applied, no silence denied. She walks without closing it off. She moves within it. The pause softens, movement resumes. The space remains with her available. The pace settles before she names it, before she measures it. It arrives already shaped, and she doesn't correct it. She used to move as if time were watching, as if delay were failure, as if stillness needed justification. But now her steps carry their own reason, not efficiency, not intention, just continuity. The ground responds evenly, no feedback given, no resistance offered, just enough support to keep going. The dog stays close, not pulling, not lagging, reading the moment without analysis. Movement doesn't always need direction, sometimes it needs permission. She lets the pace find its own shape. Groove pop, steady stays, no push applied, no speed implied. She lets the pace settle in and move from there. Her attention loosens from outcome, from sequence, from what comes next. Breathing stretches slightly longer in the body, shorter in the mind. She notices how often she tried to optimize motion when all it needed was consistency to function. The sound underneath remains modest, bass repeating without statement. Keys touching lightly, leaving space intact. Flow doesn't need momentum, it needs continuity. She stays with the pace a little longer. Groove pop comes softer, no target ahead, no rule to follow. She stays until the pace feels natural. The dog pauses again, looks around and continues, not because it must, but because it can. She follows that logic without imitation, without delay. The surroundings stay active but don't compete. Voices blur into tone, movement blends into pattern. Soft alignment, even spacing. Bass loops without emphasis, keys breathe between notes, drums stay dry and distant. No bills and no release, just time passing cleanly. The groove doesn't instruct it, it tappery. She thinks about later and lets the thought drift later. Doesn't require rehearsal, it will arrive intact. The pace feels dependable now, not fragile, not temporary. It feels like something she can return to without recalibration. Some rhythm isn't created, it's recognized. You don't control flow, you stop interrupting it. When nothing demands acceleration, the body remembers how to move without tension. Steadiness doesn't remove progress, it clarifies it. She lets the pace find its own shape. Groove pop steady stays, no force applied, no motion denied. She lets the pace remain and walks within it. The movement continues naturally, the sound thins, the pace remains inside her. The day could do 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 do. The sound stays gentle, the pace feels settled. Nothing stands out, everything stays usable. Movement carries forward without being guided. Each step finds the ground, then releases without delay. The body stays centered enough to continue. Without effort, breathing follows its pattern. In, out, at a steady rate. Day continues at a usable pace. Groove pop steady, not calling attention. The day continues and moves on. Attention stays wide but relaxed. Thoughts pass nearby without staying long. Time moves evenly along the motion without pressure. Sound rests underneath, holding consistency. The day stays workable while it moves. Groove pop steady, evenly placed. The day stays workable and goes on. Oh, the body follows familiar timing because it feels known. No signal appears, no shift is required, just continuation. Each step clears space for the next one without holding. The pace remains stable because nothing interrupts it. Group 6 steps continue. Group steps continue. Group steps continue. Sound repeats, gently staying level. Staying level, this carries on enough to fade into the background. Distance feels neutral, neither close nor far, just open. Nothing turns into urgency, nothing turns into rest. Everything stays balanced. The movement feels reliable because it does not change midway. Steady, consistent, the day continues and holds, and holds. Duration feels even, not lighter, just steady. Sound keeps the same color because it stays supportive. Breathing remains steady without correction, without without pressure. Movement remains available for a while. The day continues while it moves. Groove pop steady, still open. No, the day continues and remains. Oh, steps continue. The moment stays smooth. Steps continue. The moment stays smooth. The spacing remains in the background as needed. The sound remains quiet. The pace stays familiar. Nothing draws focus. Everything stays open. Movement carries on smoothly without adjustment. Each step meets the surface, then let's go without delay. The body stays aligned enough to continue without correction. Breathing stays consistent. In, out, at a gentle rate. This motion stays light and available. Groove pop steady, not asking attention. This motion stays light and continues. Attention rests nearby on simple details. Nothing needs sorting, nothing needs naming. Time moves evenly along the motion without pause. Sound stays beneath the steps, holding balance. This motion stays usable while it moves. Groove pop steady, evenly placed. This motion stays usable and goes on. Familiar timing because it feels natural. No signal forms, no shift appears, just continuation. Each step leaves space as it passes without accumulation. The pace remains workable because it stays simple. Groove section, steps continue, steps continue, steps continue, steps continue. Breathing aligns with the motion, with the motion, with the motion. Sound repeats gently, staying level. This carries on long enough to blend into the background. This carries on long enough to blend into the background. Distance feels neutral, neither narrow nor wide, just open. Nothing turns into urgency, nothing turns into rest. Everything stays balanced. The movement feels reliable because it does not change midway. This motion stays light and available. Groove pop steady, consistent. This motion stays light and holds. Duration feels even, not shorter, just steady. Sound keeps the same tone because it stays supportive. A breathing remains steady without correction, without pause. Second groove section. The sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. The moment stays open without pressure. Movement remains available for a while. This motion stays light while it continues. Groove pop steady, still open. This motion stays light and remains. sound stays quiet, the movement stays smooth, the spacing remains in the background as needed. The street stays easy to read, the street feels open, the sound stays low, the pace remains clear, nothing pulls focus. Steps move along the same line, not guided, just continuing. The surface stays predictable under each step, without variation. The body remains upright, balanced enough to keep moving. Breathing stays regular, in, out, without adjustment. The street stays easy to read, groove pops steady, not asking attention. The street stays easy and continues. Attention rests lightly on what is nearby. Nothing has to be solved, nothing has to be named. Time moves evenly along the path without pause. Sound stays beneath the motion, keeping shape. The street stays usable while it moves. Groove pops steady, evenly placed. The street stays usable and goes on. The body keeps its timing because it feels familiar. No signal rises, no moment drops, just steady motion. Each step clears space for the next one. Without holding, the pace remains workable because it stays simple. Groove session, steps continue, steps continue, steps continue, steps continue, steps continue. Breathing aligns with the steps, with the steps, with the steps. Sound repeats gently, staying level, staying level, staying level. This motion lasts long enough to fade into the background. Distance feels manageable, neither tight nor wide, just open. Nothing turns urgency, nothing settles into rest. Everything stays balanced, the movement feels reliable because it does not shift midway. The street stays easy to read, groove pops steady, consistent. The street stays easy and holds. Duration feels smooth, not lighter, just even. Sound keeps the same tone because it stays supportive. Breathing remains steady without correction, without pause. Second groove section, the sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. Ooh, the moment stays open without pressure. Movement remains available for a while. The street stays easy while it continues. Groove pops steady, still open. The street stays easy and remains. The street stays open, the sound stays low, the spacing remains. remains in the background as needed. The light stays even, the sound stays low, the pace feels settled, nothing stands out. Steps move forward quietly, without checking direction. The street holds a familiar tone, consistent, unchanged. The body stays in motion at the same height, without adjustment. Breathing follows naturally, in, out, in, adding moves at a steady level. Groove pop steady, not asking attention. The afternoon moves and continues. Time feels wide but not stretched. Attention stays open, then narrows slightly, then opens again. Thoughts remain light, passing through without staying. Sound rests underneath, holding the background. The afternoon stays usable while it moves. Groove pop steady, evenly placed. The afternoon stays usable and goes on. The body follows familiar timing because it feels known. No signal forms, no moment resolves, just continuation. Steps clear space as they pass, leaving room behind. The pace remains workable because nothing interrupts it. Groove section. Steps continue. Steps continue. Steps continue. Steps continue. Steps stacked into. Sound repeats gently, staying level, staying level. This motion lasts long enough to fade into the background. Distance feels neutral, neither near nor far, just open. Nothing turns into intention, nothing turns into rest. Everything stays balanced, the movement feels reliable because it does not shift midway. The afternoon moves at a steady level. Groove pop steady, consistent. The afternoon moves and remains. Duration feels smooth, not shorter, just even. Sound keeps the same color because it stays simple. Breather remains steady without correction, without pause. Second groove section, the sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. Steps continue. Steps continue. Steps continue. The moment stays open without pressure. Movement remains available for a while. The afternoon moves while it continues. Groove pop steady, still open. The afternoon moves and remains. The light stays even, the sound stays low. The spacing remains in the background as needed. The sound stays low, the pace stays even. Nothing asks for attention, everything feels eligible. Movement continues quietly at the same level without emphasis. Each step lands softly then releases, leaving space behind. The ground supports the motion without reaction, without variation. Breathe and repeats naturally, in, out, without focus. This pace remains easy to stay with. Groove pop steady, not calling forward. This pace remains easy and continues. Thoughts pass by lightly near the surface, they don't enter fully. Some fade, some linger briefly, none require response. Time spreads evenly across the background without highlighting anything. Sound stays underneath, holding consistency. This pace remains steady without adjustment. Groove pop steady, evenly placed. This pace remains steady, and we're follow familiar timing because it feels available. Ooh, no rise forms, no release follows, just continuation. Moments pass through without stacking, without pressure. The pace stays usable because nothing interrupts it. Groove section, soft steps repeat, soft steps repeat, soft steps repeat, soft steps repeat. Breathing stays aligned with the rhythm, with the rhythm, with the rhythm, with the rhythm. Sound remains present without direction, without change, without emphasis. This continues long enough to blend in. Distance feels neutral, neither close nor far, just open. Into intention, nothing turns into rest. Everything stays balanced. The motion feels trustworthy because it stays the same from step to step. This pace remains easy to stay with. Groove pop steady, consistent. This pace remains easy and holds. Whoa, yeah. Duration feels lighter, not shorter, just less dense. Sound keeps its shape because it stays simple and familiar. Breathing stays even without interruption, without direction. Second groove section, the sound repeats quietly. Sound repeats, the sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. The moment holds without pressure, without demand. Movement stays available for a while. This pace remains easy while it continues. Groove pop steady, still open. This pace remains easy and remains. The sound stays low, the movement stays soft, the spacing remains in the background as needed. The sound stays soft, the movement begins already. Nothing stands out, everything feels ready. Steps follow a familiar line, not measured, just repeated. The ground receives each step, then lets it pass without holding The body stays upright, balanced enough to continue. Breathing stays regular, in, out, and a usable pace. This walk continues without effort. Groove, pop, steady, not asking for focus. This walk continues as it is. Attention drifts slightly, then returns on its own. Thoughts stay nearby, loose, unattached. Time moves evenly alongside the steps without speeding. Sound rests beneath everything, keeping shape. This walk stays usable while it moves. Groove, pop, steady, evenly placed. This walk stays usable and goes on. The body keeps the timing because it feels known. No signal rises, no moment drops, just steady motion. Each step clears space for the next one without accumulation. The pace stays workable because it remains simple. Groove section. Steps continue, steps continue, steps continue. Breathe in the lines with the steps, with the steps, with the steps. Sound repeats gently, staying level, staying level. This motion lasts long enough to fade into the background. Distance feels open, neither narrow nor wide, just present. Nothing turns into urgency, nothing settles into rest. Everything stays in between. The movement feels reliable because it does not shift midway. This walk continues without effort. Groove, pop, steady, consistent. This walk continues and holds. Duration feels smooth, not lighter, just even. Sound keeps the same color because it does not change its role. Breathing remains steady without correction, without pause. Second groove section. The sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. The sound repeats quietly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. Steps continue evenly. The moment stays open without pressure. Movement remains available for a while. This walk continues while it moves. Groove, pop, steady, still open. This walk continues and remains. The sound stays soft, the steps keep moving. The spacing remains in the background as needed. The sound stays in the background at a steady level. Nothing stands out, nothing fades completely. Movement continues quietly across familiar space without adjustment. Each step settles then releases, making room without pause. The ground supports the motion the same way each time. Motion drifts gently, then returns without effort. Thoughts remain loose, they don't gather, they don't insist. Time spreads evenly across the surface of what's happening. Nothing requires direction to keep moving. This sound stays consistent across the pace. Groove pop steady, evenly placed. Oh, this sound stays consistent, it works. The body follows a rhythm because it's already there. No emphasis appears, no contrast forms, just continuity. Moments pass through one by one, leaving no way. The pace stays usable because it stays quiet. Groove section, soft rhythm repeating. 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 Steps continue evenly, steps continue evenly. Breathing stays aligned with the timing, with the timing. The sound holds position without direction. This continues long enough to blend. Oh, distance feels neutral again. Love to flame. Oh, but distance feels neutral again. Open but contained. Nothing shifts in a focus and nothing drops away. Everything remains balanced. The motion feels reliable because it doesn't change. The sound feels behind but without to groove pop steady, consistent. This sound stays behind the lines and it holds. Duration thin, slightly not shorter, just lighter. Sound keeps its shape by staying simple. Breathing stays even without interruption. Second groove section, the pattern repeats softly. Continues even continues even movement continues evenly. The background remains in place. This stays available for a while. This sound stays behind while things continue. Groove pop steady, still open. This sound stays behind and remains and remains. The sound continues, the movement continues, the spacing remains quietly in the background.